And now, live from the Tanzu TV studios, it's Tanzu Tuesdays with your host, Robert Burley.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much. We already have some people pinging on the chat. It's so nice to see you all again. Welcome to Tanzu Tuesdays. I'm Bob Brinley, bringing you with Paul and Tiffany another fantastic week. Hello, Paul. Hello, Tiffany.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Wonderful. How
Long
are
time
you?
no see.
Yeah. This and Mama Dragon's on. Tasha's on. She's sending her love. Hello. Sweet Killer 9, Tortilla 1999. Welcome, everyone. We're very excited to welcome our next guest. As I was telling him earlier, he's our first guest outside of kind of our little Advocate spring tour bubble. And so I'm very excited to have him. Please, everybody, welcome Bryan Liles.
Hello. Right about now, I'm imagining some kind of applause, but there
Huge.
is no applause. So
like, look up in the
I'll just
rafters and
assume
thank the people.
everyone is applauding.
Yeah, in the cheap seats, thank you.
Yes, thank you. And you especially.
Tasha says applause with
yep.
a bunch of exclamations.
Perfect.
Bob, you're usually
Bryan,
really good with the mouth noises. I'm surprised you didn't do an applause noise.
Sure. I don't know. That was my attempt at a raucous applause.
It was too quiet. Not raucous.
I know. I need a air horn, and just get that going. Actually, we have that on the app. Anyway, Peter Schmidt knows what I'm talking about. So Bryan, thank you so much. You are in Washington, D.C., I understand.
Yes.
And so
the other Washington.
Yes. Oh, wow. We got the battling Washingtons.
Uh-oh.
There's a good thing. There's a whole country in between to separate the egos right now going on between Tiffany and Bryan. What's going on? So Bryan, you are an employee of VMware. Give a little bit of a background on who you are and what you do.
Oh, wow. So I am a developer. I'm an infrastructure developer. I've been building clouds and things that serve other things for 2 decades now.
Wow.
And I built ISPs and I built a cloud, like a legit cloud. I was one of the first engineers at DigitalOcean. And then I went to, after some other things happened, I went to Heptio to go help build this whole Kubernetes community with 2 of the founders of Heptio. And then VMware is like, hey, come join us. So now I'm at VMware. And now what I focus on is some people, I tell my wife, and she's like, it's kind of boring. But really what I do
So you tell her before she goes to sleep, she's like, tell me what you do again.
I don't know what she does either, so it doesn't really matter.
It's fair.
But
it's fair.
What I do now is I work on a horizontal team where we actually helping all of our other teams in the Tanzu brand do great things. So this particular week and for the next few weeks, I'm actually focused on how do we deliver applications to production on Kubernetes. And you got to start with the basics. So that's why I'm going to talk about YAML today.
Hey.
Oh, that's our favorite topic, isn't it?
That's right. Mr. Gorbachev, bring that YAML wall down. It's I like to say that when Michael Cote brings up his YAML wall. Good old Cote. Hopefully he's not watching because it's like 4 a.m. and he's got a baby. So hopefully the baby's sleeping.
It's like 10 p.m.
Oh. Time zones are hard.
Right, time zone.
Time zones are hard. Well, hopefully he's sleeping anyway. It's 10 p.m. He should be asleep. So anyway, cool, awesome. Well, we're excited to hear that Kubernetes. I'm gonna call it jazz. That Kubernetes jazz. But before we get into that, I obviously have to do some of my housekeeping stuff. So a quick reminder: tomorrow, everybody, the most upfront thing that's happening is tomorrow, Cloud Foundry Summit. Go to cloudfoundry.org, and they're going to have an events page. You can register. So many amazing talks happening over the next 2 days. So June 24th and 25th, that is coming up. So if you haven't registered, please do and enjoy the majesty of the Cloud Foundry Summit. Then next week, next Monday, Tuesday, Cora, am I saying this right if you're watching? But June 29th and 30th, we have the Spring One Tour. And so if you want information on that, spring1tour.io. And Cora Iberclyde and Andreas Evers, are going to be talking about the CI/CD experience, Kubernetes edition. So take everything that you've learned today and then go learn some more stuff about Kubernetes next week. You will want to sign up for that one because there's a specific Zoom webinar that happens, and so you can answer questions day one. They do a great presentation. Actually, I can't tell you what they're doing. I do know what they're doing. It's exciting, and there's actually some good hands-on stuff. And then the next day, you can take any of the questions that you have and stuff that you've worked on, and you can do, they have like a fireside chat. So Cora and Andreas are going to be a part of that fireside, and they've invited a couple of other Kubernetes friends. So that's going to be really exciting.
And we might be
so
doing
again,
some sneaky streaming of that onto this Twitch channel.
You can stream it, but you can't ask questions and get your stuff, as a part of it. And so, so if you forget, you can show up on this and you can see it. And again, that's a 2-day experience starting June 29th and June 30th. And go to spring1tour.io to register. And of course, we always have our big spring conference, Spring One, which is happening September 2nd and 3rd. It was going to be in Seattle, a particular Washington. I'm not going to say which one's better, but sadly, it's going to be. It's still happening, which is great, but it's going to be virtual, and so it's free for all. And register at spring1.io. And then, as always, if you want to get more part of the VMware Tanzu developer experience, you can always go to vmware.tanzu.com/developer. Go to tanzu.tv to watch this and other great informational videos. And then I remember Paul has something he wants to share with us.
Yeah, coming up on July 7th, we are doing a Getting Started with Kubernetes workshop. It is already completely sold out. So what we're going to do is we are going to...
That's a teaser to you all.
We're going to stream it on this channel, and it's actually going to overlap with Tanzu Tuesdays. So we will be skipping Tanzu Tuesdays in order to bring this workshop to you. Also, most of our hosts are involved in that workshop. So if you want to learn some really basic Kubernetes stuff, that is definitely a worthwhile workshop to join in. Obviously, streaming, you won't get access to our infrastructure, so you would need to bring your own Kubernetes cluster. But that is quite simple these days. You just need Minikube or Kind. And if you want to reach out to me on Twitter or something, I'm more than happy to help you get prepared to join in on that.
And that'll be at 9 a.m. Pacific?
That is 12 p.m. Eastern time. So 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right. Math is hard.
And it's like 4 hours. And then also on the 30th, because, overlapping things, I'm co-giving a webinar about the Kubernetes developer experience with Jacob Bogie from VMware and Jeffrey Hammond from Forrester. And I can post the link in the chat.
That's awesome. Yes, please post any pertinent links to people in the chat. And that's awesome. We're excited. It'll be a different Tuesday for me, but I'll figure out something else to do. I'll just miss you.
Or you can just watch us for 4 hours.
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm going to do.
You can join in on the workshop.
That's true. I think that my viewpoint is going to be needed during the 4 hours because that's a long time. Everybody bring your Kind for running Kubernetes, but also bring your Kind bars for your nutrition because it's 4 hours long. So you're going to need to have a snack, much like the little boy in The Neverending Story. No, we have so much more to go. Anyway,
I'm just looking at Bryan and I'm just seeing this okay expression going on.
I just thought that was like the most ridiculous scene from that movie where he is eating a sandwich and he's like, no, I have a lot more to go. Like what 5-year-old or 7-year-old knows to save his sandwich for his adventure in his book?
I can't even do that. I'm a grown man and I can't eat half a sandwich for later. So Bryan, what's going on? Have you got anything coming up? Have you got any exciting events or projects or anything you want to talk about?
Let's see. So I was asked to speak at Spring One. I don't know when that is. So I know it's later on in the next few months.
The first week in September.
Spring,
Yeah, maybe.
yes, September 2nd and 3rd.
Yeah, I'm more like the. There was a movie called The Wonders, and there was a line from that movie where he says, "I want you to go onto the stage, sing your song, take a bow, unplug your guitar, and run off the stage." That's where I am with all of this. I just show up when people tell me to show up and do my thing. Other than that, I've actually been trying to pare back. I tweeted about this yesterday about sitting down while I do things. I don't like it, so it's hard for me to sit down and do this. But I'm typing, and I don't want to be unstable while I'm typing and while I stand up. So um, I am paring back and just trying to be a spectator for a bit. But when I can get back out in the field and talk to people in public, I will be out there. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, great.
Now-
well, I think. Oh, go ahead, Paul. Yes, go ahead.
No, that's good.
Okay. Well, then, without further ado,
I'm just thinking about Octant now.
Oh, well, there
Oh.
will be some Octant. I'll talk about that actually a little bit because why not? I made it. I think it's pretty cool. So if you're ready, I will start sharing my screen.
Yeah, let's do
do
it.
it.
All right. So this is where it gets interesting. Zoom is so awkward when it comes to sharing stuff. All right. So we'll move. I don't know where Zoom went. And because this is a presentation, I made 4 slides. And I want to actually just give some context before getting started. So we're going to talk about Kubernetes workload configuration. This is more of a simpler way or a fancier way of saying we're going to talk about dealing with YAML. And why is that a big thing in Kubernetes? Well, YAML is hard. It's not for humans, but it's readable by humans. I guess it's better than JSON for humans, but who knows? So we all have to do it. And I would wager that a lot of people who are approaching it from weird and awful ways. So I wanted to just think about that and maybe throw out some more interesting ways of things that I'm doing and things that the community is doing as well. So who am I? I'm a senior staff engineer at VMware. What does that mean? It means that well, it's actually very interesting. What I do is I pick a particular area, and this time it's configuring Kubernetes, things that run in the clusters, and I go and either I write docs for that, or I solve it, or I empower other people to solve it. It's kind of a cool position to have. So here is me. I'm this guy. This young, pretty girl right here is my youngest daughter, and we were at my oldest daughter's 16th birthday party a few years ago. And I think about Kubernetes and I think about Tanzu. And the reason I bring up Tanzu is because it's Tanzu Tuesdays. So everything I'm doing right now is in support of what we're doing in Tanzu. But I'm not here to sell you Tanzu today. I'm here to tell you better ways to work with YAML.
I think you need V2 of the image, but with you dancing as well.
That will never happen.
Darn it.
Got to put out what we're doing here. I want to deploy my application to Kubernetes. Yep, that's what we're doing today. We want to talk about that actual deployment bit. And so what do we have here? We have Kubernetes, and we have an application. And I'm every bit of an engineer. This is about all the slides you're going to get from me. So let's just ship that away. So the rest of this presentation is going to be in VS Code and also in the browser. So earlier, I don't know who said it. Did Tiffany or Paul talk about Octant?
Me.
All right, Tiffany brought up Octant. So something else that I did a while ago is I created this thing called Octant. And what is it? Octant is a desktop browser-based viewer for Kubernetes. Why is it nicer than the Kubernetes dashboard? Well, Octant understands CRDs. Octant is extensible. And actually, I like the colors. And I made it. So that's why it's better to me. But why is it better to you? Well, we're trying to show you things inside of your cluster and try to give you a little bit of insight. So if things are broken inside of your cluster, Octant can actually tell you about those things that are broken inside of your cluster. And something neat that this is one of the first features we put in there is that we actually can show you how things are connected in your cluster. So right now everything is green, but if there was a problem with your pod, we could tell you that there was a problem with your pod, but we could also tell you that it affects the replica set and the deployment as well. So this is it was more of an experiment at first, but now it's actually grown into its own thing. It's like the third most popular open source project from VMware. That's kind of dope. So we'll definitely be using this, and I use it all the time. So, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're just going to talk about Octant and the usage of YAML. So let's get started. And just to let you all know, what I'm talking about, whether you're running Minikube or Kind, or in this case, I'm using I just fired up a cluster in my Octant project on GKE. It doesn't matter. I really could have used anything. This was just what I had configured, and this is what I'm going to use. So I'll get started, and just to let y'all know, this is going to be a lot of command line because this is just how we work.
Could you increase the font a little?
Yes. I was actually going to ask. Is that better?
Yes.
All right. I don't use VS Code, so I got how do I turn that thing off on the side?
Click the file button. It should go away.
Look at that. All right. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create a Tanzu Tuesday. We're going to create a Tanzu Tuesday namespace. And just to show you, because Octant's here, notice that Tanzu Tuesday is already there. Octant is real-time views of your cluster. So let's get started. And to get started, we got to start with, so what directory are we in? Oh, we're in the directory I wanted to be in. So the easiest way to get something into your cluster is to use kubectl or kubectl, whatever you want to call it, kubectl, people call it. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this pretty handy tool to change my namespace. It's part of a project called kubectx, and it just allows me to change my context so I don't have to type -n Tanzu Tuesday all the time. And if my thing was a little bit wider and my prompt showed up, it actually does show up in my prompt. But that's not where we are right now.
Can you just take a second to mention what that prompt is? Because I learned about this prompt from watching you on TGIK, and I've been using it ever since.
Oh yeah, let me. So I'm kind of a weirdo, and I love command lines, and been using them for a really long time. So I put a lot of work into them. So I use a shell called fish. A lot of people use either Z shell or bash. Fish is totally different. It's not a POSIX compliant shell, but it's a human compliant shell. So what does it allow me to do? Well, if I want to search for the last time I typed kubectl, I can just type that and just hit up. If a command takes more than a couple seconds to run, what it'll actually do is it'll tell me how long that command took to run. And the neat part here is for Kubernetes are these two things. So this is my current cluster with the current namespace actually in the parentheses in my current directory. So that's kind of neat. I like it. It tells me what I need to be, but it's also pretty friendly that whenever I go to a more narrow screen, it says you probably don't want to see that if your screen is narrow, so it gets rid of it for you. So that is my shell. I am a huge fish shell advocate, but I still write all my scripts in bash because I just don't care to learn that. But I like it. I like the command line experience. Oh, and one other thing that I like about it is if you're at the shell and you actually type a quote, and this is something that I always fall for. You notice that it's red, and then if I type some characters in there, and it goes, oh yeah, you closed your quotes, because we do this all the time where we don't close our quotes, so it actually can tell you that you didn't close your quotes.
That right there is worth the cost of admission.
Yes, it is. So back to our demo here. And this whole thing will be interactive. Please interrupt at all times. We're going to go through like 8 examples, and we're going to go from easy to what in the world is Bryan thinking? So like I was saying, we want to get things into the cluster. Oh, something else that I do. I am lazy. So I've aliased K to kubectl. Just let you know whenever you see that K, that's actually just kubectl. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get this thing in my cluster. And if we go over here and we look, we can see it coming up. This image was probably already on the cluster, and we can see all the things in there. And this is actually the simplest way to get things into your cluster. And so if we look at this and we look at this deployment.yaml file, there's not much in here. There's a selector, some replicas, and a pod template spec, which basically says what we are going to run. And there's one container, it's nginx 1.19. This is literally the canonical example for Kubernetes. I always start here, and this is the one I can type from memory. But I wanted to show you this is where we start, and this is how everyone starts, with something very simple. And generally what happens is it doesn't remain simple. So what we need to do is we'll talk about things that we can do to make this easier to configure over the long term. And I want to just give a caveat right now. I'm not going to talk about Helm today. I think that Helm is a great addition to the community, but I also think that we can innovate in other ways to get us the things that we get in Helm, but we can also move past that. And the number one thing that I will say is that writing my templates in with Go's template language, that just makes me shudder, and I never know if it's right or not. So got this thing in the cluster, and it's very interesting. I use VS Code because it was just easier to see. But to tell you the truth, I probably would just use Vim the whole entire time. So this is real meta. I am Vim in VS Code just because.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have the option to open the file, at the top of the screen.
No, we'll go back and look at that thing later, but we'll use Vim for right now. So we have this in the cluster, and I'm going to do one change. I'm going to change replicas from 2 to 3, and we'll apply -f deployment YAML. And the neat thing about Kubernetes is that we are changing state. We're not actually changing anything in our cluster. We're changing the state that we require. So I wanted to have the number of replicas to be 3. And if I go here to Octant, you'll see that there was 3. And if you were paying attention, you notice that 1 popped up. If I were to delete it, because the deployment wants 3, it'll delete, and it's already created a new one. And that's kind of neat. And that's where we start. And that's the easy part of YAML. But there's something more that there's a problem here. And I only have one object. But if I were actually to have 2 objects, let's say I had deployment and a service, and I deleted the service from my configuration or my manifest, my YAML file, and I applied that again, what would happen? Would anything be deleted? No. And this is a problem that we have with kube control, just in general with kube control applied. It doesn't prune. It will change, it will basically set what's in the file, but it will not prune. So we really need to think about, can we do better than this? So let's just get rid of this. So, delete -f, deployment. And if we watch over here, everything will go away for the most part. At least all the pods will go away. And the next thing I want to do is, like I said, there was 8 parts to this. And the next thing we're going to talk about is kapp. And kapp, actually, let me go back to my browser. I'll make it full screen. So if we go to get.kapp.io, so this tool is really serious because it has a black page. But what kapp is it's a deployment tool, and really what it thinks about is deploying things to the cluster. And so kapp knows about your configuration a little bit. It can do ordering. So if you're doing things like if you use the concept from Kubernetes of custom resource definitions, which allow you to create new APIs in Kubernetes, or CRDs, it'll actually order your YAML to actually post the CRD first before it creates anything that relies on it. So there's a little bit of smart things in there. So actually, let's take a look at how kapp can make our lives better. So if I go back and I look at my directory, we're in this O2 directory. So there's a little bit of difference. So before we did kube control apply. Kapp is its own binary. It's kapp, and we can just do deploy. And actually, what's in this directory? Oh, there's 3 things in this directory. There's CRD, and then there's a custom resource, and then there's a deployment, I think, that I had from them before. So now there's 3 things in here. And the neat part about this is I don't need to tell kapp to order. So if I go kapp deploy -a, let's say my app -f, what's going to happen is kapp's going to look through all my things there, and it says, oh, you have these things. So you have a custom resource definition, and then you have this custom resource cron tab, and you have the deployment. It did the ordering. It figured out the order it needs to be there. And then another neat thing that it did is it says, I'm going to wait for you to say this is okay. Because sometimes you want that, because if you have a large set of YAML, you might not know everything that's in there. So kapp will actually do that for you. So we'll go yes, and it's very wordy. It's actually telling me what it's doing. And another neat part about this is that kapp, whenever you do a deployment in Kubernetes, it creates a replica set, which then manages your pods. Kapp waited for all these things to happen. So it saw that we needed, I needed 2 replicas. So it waited for those replicas to show up before it moved on. So we know that when this thing is done, that my deployment is created. So if I go back to Octant, see we have an Nginx deployment here with 2 pods. But also if I go to my, let me reload this page. Got it, ran into an Octant issue. Let me go behind the scenes real quick. This is what I love about software and doing it live. So let me get rid of this one and get rid of this one.
We'll
I'm just
edit
gonna
this out in
restart
post.
Oh, it's not even a big deal, actually.
Well, that's okay, because we're not really good at edit
it. So no, I'm just restarting Octant real quick.
And plus, our viewers like looking under the hood, which is nice.
Yeah,
too.
so this is the cool part about open source software. You know, sometimes things work and sometimes things don't. And like 90% of the time, this shows up where it actually the custom resource will actually will show up, and then like 10% of the time it doesn't. So you just restart Octant and it's all happy. So we got this cron tabs here, so we can actually click on this cron tab. Octant knows nothing about it, but it can guess some things about it. And so this cron tab is in here. And that's kind of interesting. So it applied them in order, and we can do better than that. So kapp introduces a couple of neat things. So if I go back and look at the whole namespace again, and I'm just looking at all the objects in a namespace, kapp created a config map called my app. And what's in there is actually a whole bunch of gobbledygook, to tell you the truth. There's nothing in there that's human consumable. But basically, it just says, hey, you deployed the app, and I'm just going to track what you deployed. And if I go back and I look at some of these objects here, so if I go back and look at the namespace overview again, and I look at this deployment, we'll notice that there's a label on the deployment. If I go right here, there's a label on the deployment that says kapp, and it's actually labeled it. So it actually knows what it's deployed, and that's good because when we come back and delete it, kapp knows how to delete. So with kapp, we can do things like kapp ls. It knows that I have an app, and it knows that I changed it 2 minutes ago. I can also say, hey, kapp, what's inside of my app? And if I do, let me see, this command, I need another dash there. It actually was able to tell me, so if I didn't have Octant available and I actually wanted to see what was in part of my app, even across namespaces, it'll actually show you these things. And this really wants a wide screen, so it's kind of garbled up. Oh, it's a little better if I make it all the way wide. What we have here is it actually shows that we have the cron tabs, but look at this, the second line here. It says that we have a deployment that creates a replica set that created pods, and it actually can show you that it created these things, and it shows you the hierarchy. I think this is actually pretty neat. And then also the cluster created this thing, these pod metrics here, and so we can see this as well. So what else can we do with kapp? Well, this is actually, it's one of my favorite tools these days. There is something neat we can do with kapp. So what if I change my deployment and I change my replicas to go to 3 replicas? So now I'm just here with my edited file, and what I want to know is, well, if I deploy this, what's going to happen? What you can do, or you can know what's going to change. What you can do is you can do the same command here, and I can add this diff changes on there. So what's going to happen is it's going to show me that, hey, on line 16, you changed it from 2 to 3 replica sets, 2 to 3 replicas. That's very useful whenever you're going to deploy. And having knowledge of what's in there is actually, yeah, it's pretty neat. And further along in here, I'll show you what happens when we do a delete. So I think that's kind of neat. And the last thing I'll show you about kapp is it can do kapp logs. So what we can do is we can just call my app, and I don't need to know the name of the containers in the pod anymore. Kapp actually already knows that. So this is in follow mode. So I would actually be able to see my logs, which is kind of neat. But the problem here is, well, this is better than just cube control by itself, but still we had to go in and we had to edit our YAML. And what if we wanted in our prod environment to have something different than we had in our other environment? So in our third section, what we're going to do is we're going to see this is exactly how do we handle that case? So before I do that, let me delete dash a my app. We'll just get rid of this, make sure there's no conflicts. So this is kind of neat here. So kapp is actually telling me this is what I'm going to delete. And notice that it knows what it created, and all the other stuff is going to go away as well. But it tracked what it actually created. So that part is kind of neat. So we'll do this, and this will be pretty quick. It's just going to go get rid of all the replica sets and waiting for some changes. And if we go look at Octant right now, Octant should be actually there should be nothing in there because there's no workloads anymore. So that's good. So earlier, whenever we were talking about doing this, I was asked, how long are we going to go? And I was like, I don't know, 30 minutes, because I get bored of talking over 30 minutes. But as I was putting together the sections, I realized I want to talk about a lot. So now we might go more than 30 minutes. So I think that's kind of, hey, it's fun to me, at least. Like, I'm just talking to my computer and my camera right now.
I'm enjoying this.
This is fun to me. So I'm just here to introduce you to things you probably haven't seen before and show you how they work in context. So before we looked at kapp, and kapp is kind of cool, but it has a partner, and the partner is called YTT. And what is YTT? YTT is a templating tool that understands YAML structure, allowing you to focus on your data instead of how to properly escape it. I think it's all in cheek and tongue though, but what YTT is a macro system for YAML. And at the bottom of this page, there's actually a playground where they show you how it works. So I go to, well, we'll just do this simple one here, this plain YAML. So what we can see is that this is all YAML, and YTT just spits that all out. And notice that there's these funky comments here. These are comments for humans. But if we go to the next page where we have data types, we'll notice that there's actually another type of comment too. And this is to tell YTT to do things, to invoke the macro system. So you'll notice here, if we look at this string quoted line over here, that just says value. But if we find string quoted over here, that's not a good one. Let's do the string one. If we look at the string value on the left, notice that it says value. So what it allows you to do is it embeds this thing called Starlark, which is a Python compiler basically in Go, or a Python interpreter in Go. It's most of Python, and we can do these really funky things. So if we go into let's go into this demo one where it's pretty complex, where we can have functions that do things. We can capture it so we can replace labels, and we can actually do things where we can have for loops. So now we can get really creative with our configurations. So let me show you that in practice. So we're in the YTT directory. And so what I have here, and I'll just tree this whole thing out to show you. I have a configuration, which I will show you in a second. And then I have some configuration values. And this is actually an important pattern for people to think about. You need to separate your configuration values from the source. And actually, I'll talk about this later. We really should not, if we get a source from anywhere, we should probably not touch it at all. We should apply transformations or whatever to it and then output that, but leave our pristine source, because when people start changing it, then things go awry. So in this example, we have 4 files. We have a deployment.yaml file, and then we have some values. And I'll actually show those in VS Code because it'll be easier to see here. And then we have 2 environments. We have a production and a staging, and I'll show you how this all works. So the first thing, so we'll close this one, and close this one. So the first thing we'll do is I'll show you this deployment file. And what's in this deployment file are 2 things. There is a deployment and there's a service. But what we've gone and done is we've used macros to pull some of the values out. So a good example would be that for labels, since we're using labels and we want them run basically we want the labels to actually be called what the application is called, but we don't know that until we generate it, so we put it in a function. And then there's another one for this whole config name where I have a config file, but I want that to be based on the name of the application so there's no overlaps. And we'll use that as well. So you'll see in here where we have these comments where for the name of this deployment, we're putting in the name that we have defined somewhere else. And if we go down to the service, same thing. And that's fine because the service and deployment can both have the same name. But down here in the config map, what we're doing is we're not using that. We're using the config name so we don't have any overlaps. So this makes it easier for us to maintain the same set of configurations across multiple environments. So what I'll do first is I will show you this, and we'll just call it our dev environment. And let me show you what that file looks like. So there's 2 files in that directory. So there was deployment, but I didn't show you values. Values is just an object. And in this object, there's 4 keys. There's a name, greeting, replicas, and image. So what we can do is when we run YTT, we can actually swap all these values out. And I think that's neat because we don't want the people who are doing our configuration to have to dive into configuration to update images. And here's a quick sidebar. You'll notice that this image here is using the manifest ID. This is super important. When you're deploying to production, if you have, let's say, like on my Docker Hub is Bryan L, and I have Bryan L/project. I should never use that because it'll assume latest. And what is latest? Well, latest is whatever it is whenever it changed. It actually doesn't point to anything. You can also use what people will tell you. Well, you'll create a Docker image and you'll call it Bryan L/application :v1, and you think you're doing yourself better there. But once again, that tag points to something that can change. So what happens here is what we really want to do is end up using the manifest ID. So this SHA-256 sum right here will never change. It points to something, and we can never change that. And I really because if we change anything inside of it, the SHA-256 sum would change. So we know exactly what we're deploying. So back to sidebar over, and we're back to our values. So how does this actually work? Well, YTT is kind of a neat command, and you can see that I actually did run through all this earlier. And this is another cool part of Fish is that it knows your previous command lines. So you can actually see what you did before. So first thing we'll do is I'll just type this to less so we can actually see that it was all filled in. So it put the name in, it put the labels in, and because this is a deployment, the labels will be in 3 different places. It'll be at a selector, and then it'll be at the spec template labels, and then it'll also and actually nope, it's just in here twice. We didn't actually put them in the deployment. So it's in here twice. So now I don't have to worry about making sure that I get it both right. But YTT was able to create this configuration. So the neat part about this is now, since this thing pipes out YAML, I can just use kapp. And this command I had before. So what we're doing here is it's errored, and I'll show you why it errored in a second. It's actually getting the information out of here, and it's errored. And it's saying I'm gonna create 3 things, and we have the error at the end. The reason it has an error at the end is because kapp knows that we're humans, and if this was not using standard in, it would actually be able to ask you if you wanted confirmation. But because we are using a pipe with Fish, there's no way to do that. So if I do put this -y on the end now kapp will put that in my cluster. And what we'll see here, if we go back to Octant, we'll see this greeter here. So it created the deployment and the pods and the replica sets. And actually, if I go up a level, we'll also see that they created the 2 config maps, one for the app, and actually created 3, one for the app, one for change set, and one for just saying what our app was. So that's kind of neat. But we just don't deploy to one environment. So let's go look in those other files that we had too. So we have this config m directory, and we'll just look at one of these. We won't go through both of them. So you have staging. So for staging, we want to keep all the defaults, but we want to override the name and the greeting in the app. And I actually will probably, well, maybe I'll show the app. But now when we run this again, let's see what happens when we run this thing again with our new app. So let me take this piece off, and let's see if our my compatriots are paying attention here. And what will happen here? Well, hold on. Why am I deleting something? Oh, so this is another good thing about kapp. Kapp will stop you from shooting yourself in the foot. So this command that I typed, because I used this deploy-a, my greeter name, it was going to replace the existing app that I had. And because kapp actually tells you what it does before, I could actually see, like, hold on, I don't want to delete anything. I want to create my staging. So yeah, we don't want to do that at all. So what I really want to do is just, we'll call this thing staging, and we'll put a -y in there, and it'll create them both. And now when we go back to Octant and go look at our cluster, we'll see that this thing is coming up. Yeah, kind of neat. So we have 2 apps. And just to show you that this is actually working pretty neat, I'll show you another Octant feature. So I'll click on one of these pods, and this is a pod for the staging app, and where we had our configuration there. Another thing I like about Octant is that normally it's wider, but I'm in a smaller screen here. It has port forwarding. So I can actually port forward right into my pod, and I don't have to worry about doing any of the command line dance. And whenever I go run this, notice it says, "Hello, staging. This was configured just with my template system." So I think that's kind of a neat piece here. And being able to be able to separate your configuration values from your actual YAML is probably better than what you want. And notice I was talking about Helm earlier, and why I'm trying to find, doing research to find things beyond it, is that this, this is not 100% valid YAML, but we're working to fix this. This looks closer than having a Go template file or a Go template inserted in there. That removes all the semantic value from the file. Even though this YAML is not it's still not valid, it has all the semantic value. And that's what we want to keep. We want to make sure that it's readable. So that is YTT.
Bryan, we have
Now,
a question from the audience for you.
Yeah, please.
Just asking about Kustomize and where it fits or doesn't fit into this.
Okay. So Kustomize actually. So Kustomize fits in. I just showed YTT. Kustomize actually approaches the exact same problem in a different way. What Kustomize is, it's a very Google solution, and I don't say that in a negative. It's just a very googly solution. And what I mean by that is they are not really averse to weird interfaces. So with Kustomize, we could have done all the same things here, but we could have to use JSON patches. And the way that you can organize your customized directory, so you could create a customized directory with a customized YAML file in there, and then you could have a base. So the base would actually have been, the base directory would have been this config directory, and then we could have actually overridden the base in a production and staging. So it's very similar. And why are we not using Kustomize? Well, so I look at it like this. I have coworkers who have written this project called YTT, and I just happen to like macros better than patches. So they make more sense to me. And so I would not say that neither is better. I will say that there's approaches for all sorts of types of problems. But I won't make that concession for kube control apply versus kapp. There is definitely an ordering issue there that kapp understands, and all the tools that kapp gives you I rarely type kube control apply unless it's like a quick thing right now. If I'm deploying something that I really want to run in a cluster, I use kapp. So that's my answer for that.
And if you like customize, there would be no reason you couldn't just use it in your command line and pipe that to kapp, right? So it'd be plug and
Actually,
play replaceable
100%.
with kapp.
100%. Yeah, I mean, you know what? That's actually a great point. So if I were to go back to my first directory here, and I were to do customize init, and I was to go to customization, and I was to go type resources, and I put deployment.yaml here, and then I did customize build. It's the same thing. So it's really where you want to fit in, and if I wanted to do customize a build and apply that to kapp and kapp deploy -a test. Oops. Well, I must have messed up. Oh,
You
I
just put a
copied
dot
the
at the
wrong
end.
file. Yeah, that's what it is. I typed something wrong. I will not go through that, but it is as simple as that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too much off script here, but you can definitely take the output of customize, because what customize does, if you run it from a command line, it just spits out YAML, and you pipe that to kube control, and it goes in there. Or you can use kube control apply -k. But the problem is that the -k is like the one whole version back from the customized command. So, like I said, it's a very googly solution. Both work. The command line the customized CLI tool works better, but they've already moved past that, and I will talk about how they moved past that in not this section, but the next one. So,
And then one real quick question before you move on. I noticed in your config and I guess I stare at YAML too much. It looked like you had spaces before your variables. Was that
You know what that was? That might have just been how it got copied out in
okay?
there. That's fine for YAML. YAML
Right.
is interesting. You can just have spaces as long as they line up. YAML, your YAML thing will figure it out.
All right, cool.
I noticed that too, but I decided not to change it.
All right.
So this next thing is, like I said before, so at VMware, I am a senior staff engineer of R&D engineer. And I like to actually take that R&D part to heart. I am not just spitting out code all day. I actually spend quite a amount of time researching and trying to figure out how to do things. So back in earlier this year, I'm not sure what month it was, maybe it was February, I created this thing called Sheaf. And, got to find something this is, very engineery of me of finding a solution, because looking for a problem. But no, actually, we had a problem. And the problem was, I have YAML, and I want YAML. I want to take the YAML, and I want to take every image that the YAML points to, and I want to move it to a Kubernetes cluster. And this Kubernetes cluster doesn't have internet, so I can't just talk to your name. I can't talk to your repositories. I need to move all of that, and I want this all to work. So there was a project from Microsoft called CNAB, but we decided not to go in that route, because CNAB actually, the way that CNAB worked is that it allowed you to write this piece of code that would do all the right things, but we decided that was too variable and too hard to use. So the experiment was, how could we make all the right decisions for people? So this next section right here, 100% experimental. But it's what we need to do is we need to try out all these ideas to figure out what sticks. And actually, I do think there's some things in this section that are a little sticky. So once again, we're back to our deployment YAML. And if I look at this deployment YAML, it's pretty much the same deployment YAML we've been using the whole entire time. So Sheaf is a command line. And actually, so here's a little blurb about it. Oh my gosh, I have GitHub changed on me. Kubernetes, Sheaf manages bundles of Kubernetes components. And like I said before, the idea was inspired by CNAB. What it allows you to do is take all of your YAML, and then all of your images that are pointed to in your YAML, from the repository, put them in a binary, and then you could like put it on a zip drive. Or we don't do those anymore. Now we use those little memory things.
That's how I know you're old. You say things like zip drives.
Yeah, so you could take it and you could move it over. You could sneaker net it. You could sneaker net deployments to your Kubernetes cluster. So I'm going to show you actually how this works there. So I have this sheaf compiled on my machine. And so sheaf works in this concept of bundles. I will admit to you that I am sheaf init. Oh gosh, there we go. Sheaf init. It's funny, I wrote this thing and I still forget what the command lines are. So what sheaf does is it says, all right, you have this bundle, and what's in the bundle? In the bundle, it creates two things at the beginning. It creates a manifest directory, and it creates this bundle.json file. And this bundle.json file, what it allows you to do is just have some kind of versioning around that. And I'll show you why that's important in a second. So the first thing we want to do is we're creating a bundle, and we want to take all of our Kubernetes manifests and we want to move them into the bundle. And then we want to package that bundle up, and we want to do one or two things. We want to either we can push it to a repository, which I'll show you how that's kind of neat, or we can create this archive. Like I said, you could put on an SD card, and you could move it wherever you want. You could sneaker net it to where you want it to be. So we're in this directory now. Look, I'm in the bundle directory. And the next thing I want to do here is manifest. I'm really big on command line, being able to do everything from the command line. So the experiment here is, how can we do this all from the command line and not have to have people edit files? Because when you have to have people edit files, it gets it's not something that we can repeat. So what this thing did is it just copied the file to there. But it actually also looked in the file to see what was inside of it too. So one thing we can do here is we have like a cat command or a less command. And what I can do is I can show that file. That's the same file we've been looking at. But let me show you something else that we can do. So I added this argument prefix, Bryan L. And you'll notice that this line down here in the container image, what it did is it figured out what my image was, and it rewrote it. And this is important for later. So basically, we can take images anywhere inside of a Kubernetes manifest, whether we can find it or you can point or you can tell us where it is, and we can rewrite that. And why is that important? Well, whenever we move to the thing that doesn't have internet access, we're going to have a new name. And I just happened to use my Bryan L. And and this is the neat part, it was smart enough to know that Bryan L is actually docker.io/Bryan L. And then it created this, which is actually the same, will point to the same image. So what can we do now with this? Well, we can push this thing to a Git repository. I mean, a Docker repository, which is neat now because now we can use Docker repositories as file transferring things. You don't have to just put everything in Git. You have access to the Docker repository, whether you're using ACR, GCR, ECR, Docker Hub, what's ours? Harbor. You can use any of those. So now we can use those as not just moving around binaries, but also moving around configuration. I think this avenue is pretty neat. And just to show you that that's a real thing, so if I go config pull, and I'm pulling it to a new directory, it's the same exact thing. So now we can move configurations, which means we can actually version and we can have manifest IDs. That part's pretty neat too. But another thing that we can do is if I go back into my bundle directory and I go sheaf archive pack, and I go bundle path, I'll do it up here. Sheaf archive pack. There we go. Now this is the neat part, and this is the moment right here. So what it's actually doing is it looked in the manifest that we had, the YAML manifest. It said, "Oh, you have an Nginx 1.19 image in there. Let me go fetch it." So it actually is fetching it, and it's putting it in this tar.gz file. So when I was talking about moving things off to a using sneakernet, this is exactly what it's doing right here. So if we look at this file, I believe it's like 400 megs. You will never believe how big your images are. Please make smaller images. That one image was 400 megs because it has operating system and Nginx. And Nginx is not very big. So, but now we could take this file, and let's assume that we wanted to take this file and we did our sneakernet thing, and we have it on our computer, on maybe our secure network. What we can do here is we can go Chief Archive, relocate, and we'll just use this command. And I'm just using another Docker repository here. So what it's actually doing is it's copying all the files out, and it renamed the Nginx something else that I can specify, which means that whenever I type this show manifest, and I'll make that bigger, the manifest that I showed before, I've actually relocated it. So to my application, to Kubernetes, it doesn't matter. It happens outside of the cluster. So we could actually move the application from one place to another. That's kind of neat. And like I said, this is research. This is where we need to think about the edges of what we're doing and how do we actually work on the edges of what we're doing. So that was the fourth one. Any questions on that one? That one is research.
Yeah,
I'm still trying to find out. Yes.
I do have a question. So a long time ago, when Docker was pretty new, we used to share images in that way. We used to stand up a Docker registry, push a bunch of files to it, and then capture like a tarball of its volume and kind of use that to be able to move it around.
Yep.
It might be possible to do something similar with this. So instead of just creating like a bunch of images, you're creating like a portable Docker registry, and maybe even ship the binary with it. So you'd plug it into any Linux box and do, stand up your registry and share this, and you sort of get, boom, the portable registry with everything ready to go.
Yes. And if we look at this, I let it spin by. What we basically do is we pull it out, we convert it to OCI2 or OCI, which is which is a more modern format from the Docker image manifest. And it's basically the format that it would be stored in, but it's exactly it. We could literally build installers with this. So this is the power of open source. We find small problems and we solve these small problems to help us solve our large problems. Like I just wanted to make it so I can relocate something. And now we could relocate a Kubernetes app and create an installer around this. Yeah, 100%. And it's open source, Apache v2. We will definitely we're still thinking about what that actually means to make this work, but it's in my arsenal of things. So earlier.
And one more quick thing. Cora made the comment that she thought it was cool that you were needing to use imperative commands to repeatedly create declarative manifests to repeatedly create deployments.
You know what? There's this saying that there's turtles all the way down.
Yeah.
Well, in our case, it goes turtles, alligators, turtles, alligators, turtles, alligators. So, but it's turtles and alligators all the way down. But you're right, and that's an important thing. I'm actually glad you brought that up. Our whole world is not declarative. Our configurations are declarative, but I like my commands to be imperative sometimes. Whenever you're working on a server, that if you're working without a server, imperative commands means that I know that what I think is going to happen is going to happen. With Kubernetes, when you actually do an apply and you do it in a declarative method, it might take a little bit of time for the API server to resolve your changes. So it's really, you got to pick your poison. So yeah, you're right. Very astute. It is declarative and imperative. And we will continue on with that theme through the rest of these times. How much more time do I have? Just curious.
But we don't.
We've got you pegged for another 3 hours. So. No, I mean you have at least another half an hour, but you are welcome to use any and all of it or none of it. Or
all right. Well, I'm excited now, so I will.
Yes.
I'll do a 30-minute talk on for you.
Yeah, our general rule is when we hear Bob snore, we know it's time to wrap it up.
All right. Well, Bob's not snoring, so I wanted to, like I said, this is not just about my tool. So we talked about We talked about Qcontrol, that's Kubernetes. We talked about YTT and kapp, that was pivotal and now part of VMware. And then we talked about Sheaf, that was a Bryan Liles special. And then we're going to talk about KPT.
KNC.
What did you say?
KNC.
KNC.
Or KNS? KNS.
Yeah, we talked about KNS. That's actually made by a Googler. So, just trying to spread this love around. It takes all sorts of people to make a great ecosystem. It just doesn't come from one place. But I did want to highlight this tool, KPT, because, and I want to preface this, is that imitation is like the sincerest form of flattery. And the reason I'm showing you this is because sometimes I see tools and I'm like, well, I wouldn't have done it that way. And I'm not just one of those people who would angry tweet it. I'm one of those people who actually go code up a solution around it. So I'm going to show you KPT, and then I'm going to show you why I'm coding up a different version as a research project for KPT. So KPT, pronounced kept. This is the first time I realized this. I must have never read this page before. Is an open source tool for building declarative workflows on top of resource configuration. Its Git plus YAML architecture means it just works with existing tools, frameworks, and platforms. KPT includes solutions to fetch, display, customize, update, validate, and apply Kubernetes configuration. So what does that mean? KPT is the tool, or kept, is the tool that Qcontrol should have been from the beginning. And from what I understand, this may have been used in Google for quite a while before they actually let it go out to the wild. But there's some really cool stuff around this. So let me show you how this works. So let me preface this with something that is a problem that we have. So you notice that at first I just used Vim to edit my YAML. And then I used YTT to generate macros for my YAML. That's cool. And, they're cool party tricks. But in the real world, the person who creates the YAML probably might not be the person who has to maintain it going forward. Us computer people are great at creating things that we toss over the fence, whether we like to or not. We just do that. But what KPT, or kept, has in it is something pretty interesting. It introduces this concept of settings. And we kind of had that with the YTT example earlier, but it was kind of loosey-goosey and it was very much convention over configuration. Now we have some explicit items here for settings. And I just want to run through this real quick and show you a pretty cool example of how kept works. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to type for a second. Actually, we're not going to do that demo. We're going to do this one, kept package. So the first thing I'm going to do here is, no, we don't want that one. I am trying to avoid having to type a really long command line, very much like a programmer. So hold on one second. I wrote all these URLs down so I didn't have to type them. So first thing we're going to do here is cut and paste. And I typed it in the Notion, and Notion, lovely, just gave me Markdown as my cut and paste thing. So there we go. I think I cut and paste the right thing here. So kept is a package manager for Kubernetes manifest. And what does that mean? I pointed it at a GitHub repo, and I said, put all the junk in examples. So it's actually going out to the GitHub repo right now, and it is fetching it. And what happens is, well, what does that mean? So if I go tree examples, it downloaded this whole huge thing. And actually, this is the Kubernetes examples things. There's so many things in there. Yeah, there's 79 directories. And then it creates this kind of neat thing called a KPT file. And what this does, it says, well, this is where I got this information from. Very important that we know where our upstreams are. And I think it part of the research, this is something that I found is actually pretty important. Where does my stuff come from? In a lot of cases, we just don't know. Something I copied off of GitHub somewhere. And that's not good enough. But what else can we do with this kept command? So we can count what's in there. And I looked. And just to let you know, there's 34 replication controllers in there, which is interesting because no one uses replication controllers anymore. I don't find this one to be all that useful. But the ability to do it, I still think, is that it has some knowledge of the types of objects is pretty interesting. What else can we do? Well, what we can do is we can go config, count, and examples. The cockroach DB. This might be more interesting. That there's a pod disruption budget, 2 services, and a stateful set. I think this is pretty interesting because when you get a large piece of YAML from somebody, what's in there? Well, someone can go through there and look for API versions and kind. But here's something even better. This tool can actually just count them in there, so you can see the shape of it. What else can we do? We can also we can run this tree command. So we can go kpt config tree. There we go. So now what we can do is we can see all the information around images and replicas. So when it comes to workloads, how is this thing going to touch our cluster? Another pretty interesting thing, be able to inspect the data that is inside of your app. So we notice that this is actually a super old version of Cockroach 1.1. They're way past that right now. But we can see that it's going to create 3 containers. It's going to be 3 replicas. So we'll have 3 stateful sets. So we'll have 3 disk things allocated, 3 PVCs, and I like this. And then there's one other command in here that I thought was kind of neat. What we can do is we can now we can basically grep through there and figure out like who's creating a whole bunch of replicas. So what this command does, it does kept config grep for spec replicas is greater than 3. That's kind of neat that they can do that from all their examples. And then it actually piped that back out the tree. So we can see that the MinIO, the Sysdig Cloud, and the vSphere stuff, there's a lot of replicas in here. So that's kind of neat. More tools for inspecting our YAML. We should not have to dive into our YAML all the time. So that was just the getting started. I thought that was kind of neat. I like to show that. But let's actually talk about something more useful. And this is actually the part of kapp that actually piqued my interest. So I'm cut and pasting another command. So this is a smaller repo here. So if I just so if I look through it and trees, hello world. Now there's only 2 files in here. This is much more maintainable. But what we can do now is if I look in my examples, no, it's hello world deploy, there's some interesting things. Kapp knows how to change YAML. And you'll notice here what looks like it actually is, it's an open API v2 reference to some config value. So what you can do with kapp is you can have config values, and we can actually use the tool to update this file. So right now we're looking at it, and it says replicas is 5, but if we go further down here, we have the image, and you notice it says 0.1.0. What I can do here is this. There we go. So I can actually go in there and I can use this imperative command, Cora. I know you'll see this. I can use this imperative command from the command line to set this as version 0.2. And if I go look at the file again, now this thing has actually edited the file. So on this line right here, this has changed. And I actually got to thinking, I was like, you know what? This is neat. And so I dug into it. And what I noticed is they are actually literally using OpenAPI. And now with OpenAPI, we can actually use the schema, and we can search through. We know how to search through YAML. We're already doing it with Kubernetes and CRDs. I thought that's pretty neat. So I said, you know what? I can't even look at the source. This idea, it blew my mind. So I said, I gotta try something else. So we're gonna get out of that directory. No more Google tools. So like I said, I'm an R&D engineer. I do a lot of time researching, and I write a lot of throwaway apps on purpose. Sometimes but this one probably will not be a throwaway. So I said, well, I like the idea of being able to have this schema for my settings, but I don't like it that it changes my file. because there's a chance if it changes your file, it can mess up your file. So I want to be able to describe those things at runtime. So if I have transformations or whatever else at runtime, I want that to happen. But I want my pristine source to be there, because what if it gets updated? So I wrote this tool called YAP. And why is it called YAP? Well, it's YTT and kapp put together. And that's about as much imagination as I have. So I learned all these things from kept, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to make this YAP thing now. So YAP is similar, but we're not going to download from the internet this time. Well, actually, yes, we are. So we're going to create YAP. And if I go tree to project, you'll notice I have a YAP file. And in my YAP file, it just has a header. And what I'm going to do now is go into my project, and I'm going to do this thing where I'm adding a project, and I'm going to cut and paste it because it's really long.
Please make a puppy mascot.
I was
Oh.
thinking the same thing.
All right, let me go back over here. So I'm adding this file. This is the Nginx deployment from Nginx deployment example from the Kubernetes.io. And now if I tree this thing, this tree, it added it to that. And what I wanted to do was build something that could change and add settings, but not touch my upstream sources. It was really big. It's a really big deal to me to keep the upstream sources as they were. So if I go yap config cat, you'll notice this is the same file. Actually, this was a little bit different because I didn't change it to 1.19. It's using 1.14. And what I wanted to do, and this is the crazy piece, because you remember whenever we were looking at our YTT before, like someone's probably looking at this file and saying, oh, I don't want to do that. Oh, macros. Oh, that's hard. I was like, you know what? It's like in Jurassic Park. You know, it's Unix. I know this. And we use computers to do things for us. So what I wanted to do was build something that could actually do it. And I'm going to show you this command line. This command line's a little gnarly, but I can explain it to you. So YAP configuration transform, which is saying, hey, build a transform. And it's a property transform. So we're gonna change a property inside of something. And what we're doing is we're saying, look for a v1 deployment, an apps v1 deployment. So API version equals apps v1, kind equals deployment. And set a value for project name called my app. And what we're going to do here is we're going to change metadata.name to project name. So really what it's saying look for a deployment, and inside of that deployment, change the metadata name to the project name variable, which we defined in line. And we'll give that thing a name too. It changes app name. And you're probably saying, wow, it's pretty crazy here. But let me show you something here with this cat command. I created a YTT overlay, and I didn't have to use any YTT, which means this is now usable by people who are not experts at the system. And not only did I do that, I also created a setters here. And so what I can do is see if I have it. There we go. I can actually just change it. Oops. There we go. So I can change the project name to update it and give it a description. So when I go list setters, hey, look, I can actually see what this value is. And I can see the type. So now we can have strong typing on that. So I can do strings, integers, floats, booleans, objects, and arrays. And I can have the system actually know about that. And so whenever we do the cat command again, it's updated. And nowhere in here, it's actually all YTT, but in nowhere in here do you have to see YTT unless you want to dive down in there. And then what we can do is we can do yap live, and we can do yap live apply, or even better yet, we can do diff, and it's going to say, hey, none of your stuff is on the cluster. And whenever we do apply, it puts it on the cluster. So if I go back over here, look at this page, go back here, we got some new stuff over here, this new updated app. pretty cool. So I'm actually going to stop here and just rant for a couple seconds. And actually, I'm just going to stop sharing. I'm just going to talk about why am I looking at this way? Stop share. So why am I going through this and looking at this? The problem that we have is that we've approached YAML as some opaque thing. YAML has structure. Computers know structure. What we should be able to do is bridge the gap between that structure, the structure that humans like and the structure that computers like. So what do humans know? Humans know about knobs and switches. Humans like to turn knobs and switches. Humans do not like looking for macros and files. Humans do not like looking for inline templating or things like that. We need to build tools for humans. So at the past few KubeCons, I've talked about tools, YAML, YAMLs for computers. At the KubeCon last year in November, I gave a keynote basically talking about how we need to reapproach YAML. So a lot of these ideas here are coming in the tools that we really are researching for Tanzu, and not just for our products. This is actually to help the community be better. And I was going to go into another one. I actually have rewritten GitOps as well, and I'll just give you my little thoughts on that. There's something I tell the engineers that I mentor. You don't define the solution with the words. You don't define where you want to be in terms of your solution. You define where you want to be in your normal words, and then you use your solution to get there. So GitOps actually has a fatal flaw. It's called GitOps. So what are you going to do? You got to store your configuration in Git. Well, what if you don't want to use Git? What if you want to store in a database? Or what if you have this thing called Kubernetes where you could actually create custom resources and we can build other tools on top of that? What if you don't want to do that? Or what if you wanted to store it on a file system or anywhere else? We should be able to replace that term Git in GitOps something else. And then we should be able to break the system down to be something more palatable. So this is actually the current area of my research. But really, what I'm trying to do is saying that the reason that things are hard and difficult is because we gave up and stopped trying to innovate in this space. There's so much ripe computer science problems in this space. For YAP, I can't use a YAML parser. I have to break it down into nodes so I can get the comments and make that work. So there's so many neat and interesting things in this space that we need to tackle. So I'm hot, so I'm gonna stop talking now.
You did great. And you don't look sweaty at all. You look cool as a cucumber.
And I guess if I wanted to summarize this, really, it's about, easy things are easy because lots of people have done complicated things to make it look easy. And we need to take that next step. And this is something that we are trying to trailblaze on to make that next step. Like Octant makes looking your Kubernetes cluster easy. The things that I'm working on right now are going to make that YAML experience so much easier.
Is YAP on the internet yet? I tried looking it up with the word Kubernetes and I got someone else's yet another pet project.
Yeah. So let me explain to you. So I'll explain to the rest of the world how this works. I work for VMware. VMware is a 31,000 person company, which means they have lots of lawyers. When you have lots of lawyers, you have lots of people looking out for things. So getting things open sourced is not easy, but it is possible. And I wanted to make sure that the idea I had was palatable before I went before the onslaught. So we're close. But I can point you to a link to it if you really want to see it on our internal whatever.
I like there was no verbal confirmation on that, just a well, Cora's asked you to do it all over again, so let's go ahead and start it from the top. Bryan Liles, everybody. No, kidding. This was great. This was really great. I'm also glad that you got pumped up because it's just fun when people get really excited about it, and I know that the audience really appreciated it. So thank you, Bryan, for sharing all your great stuff with us.
Well,
sorry. You're allowed to say thank you without me interrupting you. My bad.
All right. No, I just want to say thank you, Bob. And Bob knows I get really busy sometimes. So Bob was pinging me, and I'm like, I got it. And then ping me again, I'm like, I got it. And I'm like, I just wanted him to know that I was ready. Like I was going to come to do this. So thank you for the opportunity. And, this was great. I'd actually come back and do something else sometime.
We would love that.
Totally
And that
should.
is,
That'd be amazing.
yeah, that is,
What are you doing this time next week?
yeah, right.
Not this.
Next week we have Olga. Very excited about Olga next week, although I'm not excited about pronouncing her last name because it is a wonderful Polish last name that is hyphenated, and I'm trying to look it up now.
So like Paul's last
Yeah,
name?
you should be an expert at hyphenated Polish last
Tchaikovsky
names.
Golieski, you're right. Let me try. Let me see.
And this was especially cool for me since like the first time I had heard about kapp and YTT was in my research on CF for capes, which I did my Tanzu Tuesdays on a few weeks ago. So this gave me a little more understanding on what I was trying to talk about that was new to me.
It feels like
you were welcome, Tiffany.
it feels like tools like YAP will help make that workflow more palatable to people, because trying to splice all of that stuff together with pipes and other stuff becomes pretty unmanageable. So getting some more user-friendly UX joining those tools together, I think, is super important. And it looks like YAP is a good first start.
My curiosity goes to whether so it's like just looking at just kapp, for instance, it adds these cool features that make it a lot easier to interact with your cluster. So I wonder if at any point if it's possible for these awesome features to end up being a part of kubectl versus yet another CLI tool, pretty much.
So that's hard. That's a hard sell. And what we would have to do, and it would be at least 18 months out. For if you look at the source for kept, you'll realize that it actually I call kept customized v2 or v3 or whatever they are now, because you look in the source, it uses a lot of customized. That's the direction they're trying to go. But I do think there's room for multiple tools, because I think kube control is too big of a tool. Just in general, it's way too big of a tool. So there is space for purpose made. I don't want another mega tool. I want a tool that just does configurations, and that's it. And so I do think there is space for that, but we can still fight the good fight and at least try to suggest some better options.
Mega tool must be stopped, no matter the cost.
I think, Tiffany, if we want to get it included in kubectl, we just have to wait until an appropriate Christmas break when no one's looking, and then just sneak it in.
Yeah, because just for some of the kapp stuff of just waiting until everything is complete as an option, or telling you might delete stuff or things like that would be super useful. I know just for the example for showing the tree, Amit, one of his other tools that he made was a plugin for kubectl to show your tree. Just little things like that.
He's the person who wrote that tool wrote kubectx and KNS.
Which I accidentally called KNC because names.
So many acronyms.
They are invaluable tools.
And KNS is an acronym for Kubernetes. Acronyms for kube names.
No, you actually, there's no lies detected. There's no lies detected there. It is a shortened version of Kubernetes.
Well, this has been great. Anything else, everybody? We just really appreciate your time, Bryan. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just glad everybody didn't run away and that people ask questions, because sometimes, we talk about light things, but sometimes you want to get in and I'm just going to do this whole thing at the command line and use Vim while I'm in my VS Code, because that's just how I operate. But no, I'm glad that we have an opportunity to surface these ideas, because here's another important thing. You can have these ideas in your head, but when you talk about them out loud, then you start realizing, oh crap, that makes no sense. Oh crap, that makes no sense. But remember, when I was talking about kapp today, and this is the first time I talked about it outside of VMware, it's oh, okay, well, this actually does make sense. Now let's go finish this tool and make something amazing out of it and get it open source. So in the summer, I think we should be looking for some neat things towards the end of summer.
Nice.
Awesome.
Well, we're always here to be your rubber ducks.
Contribute.
Next time you have a weird and strange idea, bring it on, and we'll rubber duck you until you decide you're going to do it.
That is the most Australian term I've ever.
You don't know rubber ducking, Bob?
I don't do you, Tiffany, or do you, Brian?
I rubber duck all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I had 7 high school interns when I was at Intel, and I got them mini Ninja rubber ducks.
Oh, there it is. All right. Okay, got it. Rubber ducky, you're the one. Got it.
Yeah, I talk to all sorts of things on my desk all the time.
So real quick, Bob, rubber ducking is when you have a conversation with an inanimate object to help clarify for yourself what it is you're trying to do or say.
Got it. I call that my multiple personalities. So,
well, we're not all blessed the same way you are, Bob. So we have to.
All right. Well, yes. Next week we have Olga. Here I'm going to go for it. Macheshik Sharma. That's how I'm going. That's what I'm saying. So she's on the Spring Cloud contract team. Going to talk about better APIs, faster tests, more resilient systems with Spring Cloud contracts. So that's exciting. We are going to have Brian back. That is also exciting. We'll figure out the whens and wheres of that. And then a reminder, in 2 weeks, you come back at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern, to Twitch stream the 4-hour Kubernetes workshop that Tiffany and Paul are going to be running. So,
and if you don't have your own cluster, let us know, and we'll spin one up on Brian's massive machine sitting under his desk that we learned about before we got on this call.
He got some clusters to spare. But all right, oops, the 6 cents we just popped up. Coder Prabhu, well said. Humans don't want to see macro; they want to press buttons and switches. All right, so
no, that's great. I'm glad that resonates with people, because that's how I look at it. Mm-hmm. So cool.
Awesome. Well, I can't thank you again enough, and good to see you, Tiffany and Paul. Miss you in real life, and hopefully we all get to.
You've never seen me in real life,
but I miss you in real life. And now one of my coworkers is just woken up from her nap, so it is time for me to bid you fond farewell.
Timing. All right.